Good morning.
Good morning.
I was trying to say good morning, Vietnam. I just wanted to say thank you to all of you wonderful, beautiful people who are here today. It's just good to see family. I think that's what this is all about, family. I've been asked to start with an opening prayer. So if you have a hat on, could you uncover, as we say in the Marine Corps? And we're just gonna, I was thinking about a prayer to say, but I think what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask you to pray with me together, a prayer that is a universal prayer and everybody knows it. It was the prayer that Jesus gave his apostles, gave to the multitude when they asked, how do you pray? And he said, this is how you pray, and that's the Lord's Prayer, the Our Father. I don't want to be alone in doing this, so I'd like you to ask you to join me, if you would. So bow your heads. And we know that Jesus is here because he said whenever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he's here. So let's start. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, now and forever. Amen. Jamie? Jamie? There you go, Jamie.
She's going to sit here. Hi, everyone.
Hi, Jamie.
Let me just take one deep breath. Thank you, everyone, for being here. This is wacky. We gather today in honor of the mentally ill, and that's why we're here. I'm so glad that Danny said the Lord's Prayer, because it teaches us the importance of empathy, and it teaches us what compassion is. And sometimes compassion looks like forgiveness, and mental health and forgiveness kind of go hand in hand. People don't necessarily ask to be mentally ill. People's actions don't warrant behavior that is okay in society, which sometimes people wind up getting arrested for their behavior because of mental illness. And I am so shaky, but I'm going to try to get through this.
You're among friends, Jamie. You're among friends.
What I was trying to say is how very important our compassion is for the mentally ill. And the reason why it hits me hard in my heart, and Lisa, is because I struggled with mental health my whole life. And it's been an overcoming obstacle, but it's a challenge, and it's a good challenge. And we can take our struggles and other people's struggles and have compassion for them. This is the first time that I ever spoke in public, so I don't even think that it's right, but because Lisa asked me to do it, I'm going to. And I'll thank her one day.
But not today.
But no. But anyway, so forgiveness. I can't even put a value on forgiveness, on the Lord's forgiveness. So why would he ask us to forgive other people? And why do we ask the Lord to forgive us? He could have liked us and still forgiven us. I mean, he loves us, but he could have liked us and still forgiven us. Do you know how important it is for us to be forgiving? And to ask the Lord to forgive us for our shortnesses and our discomforts and our shortcomings and our wrongful doings. Well, it is so important, and it has so much value to not only to ask the Lord for forgiveness for our shortcomings and our sins, but to forgive other people for theirs. And sometimes it does come in the form of mental health issues. And the fact that Colonel Wells is willing, and Dr. Pete Earley has the ability and the talent to put in words and to put into implement ways to help people who are in trouble, who don't have the voice to speak for themselves. That's why this is important for me, and that's why I'm standing here shivering and shaking and looking like a whatever.
Looking great.
Lisa that the Lord has put in Lisa to get everybody to do all this today. And thank you for coming. I want to tell you a little something about Lisa. Lisa Talia Farrow, dedication to ensuring that individuals living with mental illness receives proper care instead of being criminalized is commendable. Her personal experience with her son's involvement in the justice system while dealing with mental illness has further motivated her advocacy and support efforts. As a result, she founded Patients Not Prisoners in Florida to continue her mission of advocating, educating, and supporting this cause. In order to ensure that efforts are successful, Lisa developed this organization using the Measure Care model as an evaluation tool. Lisa, along with concerned members of community, met for 14 weeks to discuss mental health and the judicial system. The Measure Care model focuses on creating sustainable change with communities by engaging community members and providing them with resources so they can advocate for themselves. Lisa's educational background in business organizational management from Bethel College has provided her with a strong foundation of skills necessary for establishing and running a nonprofit organization. Lisa retired from a 30-year career in banking and investment management. She managed the trading department for an international money manager in San Diego, California for 23 years. Took an 8-year sabbatical to care for her son, then went on to manage a couple of bank financial centers. During her career, in finance, Lisa owned 2 women's fitness franchises for over 10 years. She also authored 2 books entitled, she only put 1 down. I wasn't going to tell you, but Bargain Beaters, a guide to saving money. And the other one, she might tell us, but I don't know, maybe she won't. Her diverse experience and expertise have undoubtedly contributed to her ability to navigate the challenges of running Patients Not Critters effectively. Did I say critters? Effectively. Now retired, Lisa enjoys participating in church activities, which, by the way, all these volunteers are from the Bible group, and they are wonderful, lovely ladies. And Bible study, going on cruises with her husband of 43 years. and spending quality time with her adult children and grandchildren. Patients Not Prisoners is a direct result of Lisa's personal experiences with her unwavering advocacy for her sons and the need for restorative treatment for the mentally ill. She is truly a mom on a mission and aims to bring about systemic change to prioritize compassionate care for individuals facing mental illness. Thank you, Lisa, and please give a warm welcome to Lisa.
Oh my goodness, I just want to give another warm welcome. I tell you, God put us together. And I've been pushing her limits. I don't know what's going to happen to me after this event. So hopefully I'm still around after this event. But thank you so much, Jamie. I appreciate it. I wanted to thank everyone here for being here. Thank you so much for coming. I really, really appreciate everyone that showed up and all of your participation and all of your support. For those that don't know, I should probably speak in here, right? Okay, I forgot, sorry. For those of you that don't know, I'm just gonna quickly tell you my story. I've said it over and over again, and I apologize if you heard it before. But my husband and I, we've been married for 43 years, and we actually, out of that marriage, we've birthed 5 adult children. And out of those 5 children, 3 of them are sons. And with our 3 sons, we, I know I do the same thing all the time. Out of the union, we've had 3 sons, and out of that, of our 3 sons, we say that we hit the trifecta. And the way that the reason why we've come to that, which wasn't an easy coming to, it really wasn't, because we thought we were cursed. It's like, why is it that we have 3 sons that experience mental illness? I won't go into all of the details, but a lot of my conversation you'll actually hear me speaking about my youngest son, who is the most severe of all, and his name is Charlie. So that's one you'll hear me speak the most about. But we actually had very, very high hopes for Charles. Charles was the last of all of the children. He's the baby. He came home one day after going to the Army and Navy Academy. He graduated with a 4.2 GPA. He received 8 full-paid scholarships to 8 different universities. He came home one day and he said, "Mom, something's not right with my brain." He said, "Mom, it's dark." And as I tell you this story, I remember where I was. I can tell you what the weather was like. I can tell you what cars were around us as we were outside. It's just that real. So fast forward, we ended up taking him to doctors and just trying to figure out what was going on. I had no idea about schizophrenia, no idea, until the doctors came back conclusively and said, "I'm sorry, your son is showing the first signs of schizophrenia. You might want to keep him close to home." He actually wanted to go to military university because his whole goal was to follow in the footsteps of his father, his grandfather, and aunties and uncles that served our country, and that was his goal. So what he did was that we decided to keep him close to home. At that point, it was California State University in San Marcos for their Naval Officers Program. Charles went through that program on a scholarship, and he lasted 6 months. In that 6th month, that's when he actually ended up really experiencing the signs of schizophrenia that took him down a really deep, dark hole. 52 plus hospitalizations later, multiple upon multiple traumatic episodes in our household, suicide attempts, homelessness, jail time, everything that goes along with this disease is what Charles experienced. Quite different from that Army, from the Army Navy Academy graduate. Quite different. So, long story short, I met up with one of Charlie's episodes. I met up with Colonel Wells, that's sitting here in the front row, and he was actually jailed in his jail for a misdemeanor offense. And we were able to build an alliance out of that incarceration that actually helped us to both understand that me as a concerned parent and a concerned citizen, and Colonel Wells, you know, as law enforcement and the officers that are actually been thrown into this role as mental health officers. What happened is that we realized that we had a mutual goal of make things better. And that's when we went through the care model that Jamie told you about. And from that care model, Patients Not Prisoners was born. So what I want to do right now, I just want to make sure I'm on time. Am I on time, Malachi? I'm on time? Okay, so make sure. So what I'd like to do right now is I really want to introduce to you about Mr. Pete Earley. All right. Now, before I actually go through his bio and introduce him to you, he is going to be our keynote speaker today. And I have to tell you, I have been reading his book entitled Crazy. This is the book right here. And if you look in the book, it's got highlights, underlines, and it's got all kinds of things. I read this, it took me about a year to read it, literally, because everything that I read, I had to stop and write and think and ponder, and I would hope that each and every one of you will walk away with one of Pete's books today. Pete has actually donated his books to Patients Not Prisoners today, and your donation will actually go directly to Patients Not Prisoners. I read this book, and as I'm getting to the end of this book, I'm laying in my bed, and this voice from heaven says, "Call Pete Earley." Now, call Pete Earley. No, God, please don't make me do this. And I fought it. I fought it.
This out of order. I must be.
Oh, I did something. Malachi, I'm sorry. What did I do? I'm sorry.
Thank you so much for the
Get
opportunity
rid
to
of
be
it.
here.
See what happens when God says something? I think I touched that. We should, yeah, okay. So this was so important to me that I actually wrote down the dates. On January the 8th, 2023 is when Lisa wrestled with God. On January the 9th is when Lisa realized she was losing that fight. And she contacted Pete Earley. On January the 13th, Pete Earley called me back. And I literally fell out of my chair. You don't know what happened on the other side. I literally fell out of my chair because I didn't know that this was actually going to happen. And when you hear his bio, you'll see why. On January the 14th, we had a discussion, and I wanted Pete to come and speak to my community. And he did accept. And on January the 18th, 2023, Colonel Wells and Pete Earley got together and they made it happen. Pete Earley is best known for his non-fiction book, Crazy: A Father's Search Through American Mental Health Madness, which was one of 2 finalists for the 2007 Pulitzer Prize. His book chronicles his struggle to help his adult son after he develops a severe mental illness and is arrested. His son's arrest prompted Earley to spend 10 months inside the Miami-Dade County Jail as a reporter. No, they didn't arrest him. They didn't arrest him. But as a reporter, where he followed prisoners with mental disorders throughout the criminal justice system just to see what actually happened to them. His book has won awards for the American Psychiatric Association, the National Alliance on Mental Illness, Mental Health America, and prompted CNN to name him as one of the nation's top mental wellness warriors. He was even invited by President Obama to speak at the White House summit about his son's illness and recovery. He served for 5 years as a parent member of the Interdepartmental Serious Mental Health Committee created by Congress to advise it on the federal mental health policy. A former Washington Post reporter, Pete has appeared 5 times before U.S. Congress to testify about the need for mental health reform. He has spoken in 49 states and addressed legislators in 5 foreign countries. He writes regularly for the USA Today and Washington Post about mental health issues, and also posts a weekly blog that is often cited by media. In a Washington Magazine cover story entitled Top Journalists, Washington Media Elite, Pete Earley was described as one of a handful of journalists in America who have the power to introduce new ideas and give them new currency. He is the author of, this one says 11, but how many books?
22.
22, so we've doubled. He has 22 books, including 5 New York Times bestsellers. His book, Family of Spies, Inside the John Walker Spy Ring, was a 5-hour miniseries shown on CBS television. For his book, The Hot House, Life Inside Leavenworth Prison, Earley spent a full year as a reporter inside the maximum security prison. His book, Circumstantial Evidence, helped to actually free an innocent man from Alabama's death row, and he won the Robert F. Kennedy Award for Social Justice. I'd like to present to you Pete Earley.
Wow, I'm so excited to be here today. Thank you. Jamie, it's so wonderful to hear you get up here and speak. Thank you for doing that. We need to listen to people with mental illness. Too often we tell them what to do instead of hearing their stories. And you put a face on it, which is so important. Thank you. Colonel Wells, thank you for having me speak to your officers yesterday. You are an inspiration. You know, officers, law enforcement, deal with more people with mental illness in a day than psychiatrists do. They're the front line. And having you recognize the importance is really, really powerful. So thank you. You're going to benefit the community. And what do I say about Lisa? When she called me, I said, well, I usually just fly in and give a speech and leave. Oh, no, not with Lisa, you know. She has me talking on book clubs. She has me on a TV show in the morning. She has me talking to the law enforcement. Now I'm here, and I think after this, you're taking me down to St. Augustine Beach to talk to people, right? Greet them in their swimsuits and say, hey, let me tell you about this. You are an inspiration. Thank you so much. You know, the only way a community changes is if you have a leader who takes the reins. And in these two, we have powerful leaders for your community, and I'm eager to see what they do and what they make happen. So thank you very much. I love the name of today, Day of Compassion, which is something we definitely all need. I am the father of an adult son with a serious mental illness. What's that mean? What's it feel like? It means I know what it is like to see a stranger occupying my son's body, to see someone who I saw when he was born all of a sudden become a whole different person. What does it mean? It means I'm the subject of whispers. Oh, if you have a child with mental illness, obviously there's something wrong with you. Or as one mental health professional told me before he found out I had a son with mental illness, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. I am the father of an adult son with a mental illness. What does that mean? It means that I have been forced to call the police, have 2 officers come, taser my son, hog tie him, and then make fun of him as he's laying there psychotic, talking about how God wants him to save a movie star. What does it mean? It means I have been accused of coddling my son. By whom? My own family, my own relatives, who have said, oh, you're making a big deal about this. He just needs to pull himself up by his own bootstraps. It means being judged by your family and friends. What does it mean? It means spending countless hours trying to convince your son to take medication because in his case, medication helps. And then having someone say, oh, those are all placebos. You really don't need those. And having him, including a psychiatrist telling that, go off as medication. What does it mean? It means holding your sobbing son in your arms like a baby, listening to him cry because everyone is telling him that he is something seriously wrong. He's not a real person, that no one wants to hire him, even though he has a college education. No one wants to date him or even be his friend. I know those feelings, every one of them, because they've happened to my son Kevin and to me. The first hint that something was going wrong with Kevin came while he was in college. He was a student at the Pratt University in New York, and we talked every Sunday. I lived down by Washington, D.C., and on this call he said, Dad, food doesn't taste good anymore. And then he hung up, and they called back and he said, Dad, I think I took 5 people, homeless people to breakfast today, but I'm not sure. And I went, what? And he hung up, don't want to talk about it. Then he called right back and he said, Dad, I'm having a hard time telling when I'm dreaming and when I'm wide awake. Well, obviously something was wrong, so I raced to New York, and my wife, Patty, managed to get us in to see a psychiatrist, which I now realize was kind of a miracle. And that guy talked to him, and he talked to him for about 10 minutes, and he came out and he says, well, Mr. Earley, if you're lucky, your son is using drugs. If not, he has bipolar disorder. Lucky if my son is using drugs? Well, a blood test showed he wasn't using drugs, and so the doctor said, look, Mr. Earley, I'm not going to sugarcoat this, okay? Your son has bipolar disorder. He'll be required to take medication the rest of his life. They'll make him gain weight. He probably will become diabetic or obese. Chances are he'll never hold a full-time job. Marriage, don't count on it. Family, oh, that's not a good idea. Regular job, there's a high probability he'll be arrested. A good chance he will self-medicate with drugs and alcohol. And oh yeah, persons with mental illness die 15 to 25 years before the rest of us. He wrote us a prescription and sent us out the door. Let's talk for a moment about that first encounter. Kevin knew something was wrong. He went voluntarily to see a psychiatrist. And we know that the chances of helping people are much higher if you can encounter them during their first break episode. But he was completely turned off and rejected by what that psychiatrist said. My wife was diagnosed with kidney cancer. What did we do? We read everything we could about it, and we said, we're going to beat these odds. Well, he did the same thing. He said to me, Dad, I'm not one of those people. I had to tell you one little funny incident. I remember it so clearly. When we were leaving that psychiatrist's office, I was like, oh my gosh, what? What? And he was grinning. And I said, Kevin, did you hear what he said? Why are you grinning? He goes, oh, Dad, that guy's crazy. Don't pay attention. In a way, Kevin was doing just what my wife did. He rejected that. He said, I'm going to do this. And quite frankly, the doctor's diagnosis was so grim, I didn't want to believe it either. So anyway, Kevin took the medication. He got better. He was doing well. And after a few months, he quit taking it. And I didn't think anything above it because, you know, if you have a headache, You take aspirin or whatever, I guess you don't take aspirin anymore, and it goes away. Flash forward 12 months, all of a sudden I get a call from his older brother in New York. Come, Pete, you gotta come. Quick, 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 Dad, come. Kevin's crazy. So I drove to New York. Kevin had been walking around in Manhattan for 5 days. He barely slept. He hadn't eaten. He was convinced God had him on a secret message. And I got him in the car, and during that 5-hour ride from Manhattan to Fairfax County, Virginia, where I live, outside Washington, D.C., he would laugh 1 minute, and then he'd begin crying the next. And I pleaded with him to take his medication, and he screamed, "Pills are poison, leave me alone." And we got to the emergency room, and just before we walked in, he said, "Dad, how would you feel if someone you loved killed himself?" Well, we went inside, and the nurse rolled her eyes while Kevin was talking gibberish about how God had him on this secret mission. And then we were taken into a room away from everybody else because of how he was acting. And we waited, and we waited, and we waited. And after 4 hours, Kevin says, "I'm not crazy, I'm out of here." And I said, "Hang on, son, hang on." And I went out and I literally grabbed a doctor. I'll never forget how he came in that room with his hands up as if he was surrendering. And he said, "I'm sorry, Mr. Earley, I can't help your son. You haven't even examined him." It didn't matter. Under Virginia law, a person had to be in immediate, imminent danger, just like the Baker Act here in Florida, before you could be required to seek treatment. And the nurse had told him Kevin thought all pills were poison. And we'd been sitting there for 4 hours. So obviously, he wasn't dangerous. So he said to me, "You seem like a good, concerned dad. Why don't you bring him back after he hurts himself or tries to hurt you?" So I took Kevin home, and during the next 48 hours, I watched him sink deeper and deeper into this mental abyss. At one point, he had tin foil wrapped around his head to keep the CIA from reading his thoughts. He slipped out of my house, slipped out early one morning. He broke into a stranger's house. He broke in to take a bubble bath. Luckily, no one was home. It took 5 police officers and an attack dog to get him out of there. And when they did, they took him to the mental health center. And I went racing over there, and I'll always thank this guy. A police officer standing outside. And he says, "Whoa, Mr. Earley, before you go in there, let me give you some advice as a father to father. Unless you tell that doctor that your son has threatened to kill you, he will not qualify, and he will not go to a hospital. Well, he'll go to jail, and you do not want that." And I looked at him and I said, "But my son hasn't threatened to kill me," and he shrugged. So I tell you this, and I do it with no pride because it really hurt my relationship with my son, but I went in and I lied. I said my son was threatening me, and so he was held over for 72 hours and put into a hospital. 24 hours after he was admitted to that hospital, I got a call from his doctor. "I'm sorry, Mr. Earley, your insurance company's not going to pay for this. They say he's not dangerous, so we're going to have to discharge him." I said, "Hold on, hold on." Well, I called that insurance company, and I got nowhere until I happened to mention that I used to work at the Washington Post, and I happened to mention that I was friends with Mike Wallace of CBS 60 Minutes. And Mike agreed to call that company. Can you imagine getting that call? "Hi, this is Mike Wallace. Why is Pete Earley's son?" All of a sudden, my son was allowed to stay in that hospital for a record-breaking 14 days. In the short time between our trip to New York and Kevin's hospitalization, I had lied to get him into treatment, and I had bullied people to get him there. And just when I thought things couldn't get worse, they did. I got a call from the Fairfax County Police. My son was being charged with 2 felonies, breaking, entering, and destruction of property. I was so frustrated. Virginia law had kept me from getting him help. Now it wanted to punish him because of what he had done when he was psychotic. I said to my wife, "I feel so helpless. I don't know what to do to help our son." And she said, "Why don't you do what you do best? Pete Earley, a father, can't do much, but Pete Earley, a journalist, can. Why don't you investigate this and figure out what's going on?" Well, for once I listened to my wife. It's my only joke. That's it. I did some digging. What I discovered was what happened to Kevin is not an aberration. Right now, each year, there are 2.2 million people with serious mental illness, schizophrenia, and bipolar disorder, and severe depression who are booked into jails. 2.2 million a year. 1 million are on probation. 365,000 are in jails and prisons. 40% of persons with mental illness have a serious encounter with law enforcement during their lives. 49% of all police shootings, 49% of all police shootings involve someone with a mental illness. Persons with serious mental illness are 16 times more likely to be shot by the police, and those with untreated mental illness are more likely to kill a police officer. Persons with serious mental illness are held in jails and prisons 4 to 8 times longer than others charged with the very same crime. Persons with mental illness have a higher likelihood of getting additional charges when they're in jail because they can't follow orders. Persons with mental illness cost 7 times more than any other person, inmate in a jail, because they're so labor intensive to deal with them. And they have a 15% higher recidivism rate than everyone else. 85% of persons with mental illness who end up in a jail have returned to those jails. And here in Florida, if you have a breakdown like my son and you live in Florida, the chances are 5 to 1 that that person will end up in jail rather than getting help. That's outrageous. So I did decide that I'd write a book about this. First I talked to my son. He said, well, who would want to read that? And I said, I'm going to find a jail somewhere far away from Fairfax County because I don't want to irritate the prosecutor. And I'm going to go in that jail and I'm going to follow people through the system. And I only got into one jail. Others turned me down. But that's because of Judge Stephen Leichman, who keeps appearing like God. I was able to spend 10 months there. Let me tell you what I saw. There are 19 cells in the one wing, the suicide wing of that jail. It was a U-shaped cell block. The officers walked down the center. All the cells had plexiglass fronts so you could look into them. All the inmates were completely naked. In cells built for 2, there were 3 and 4 and 5 people. And because their cells were designed, old cells that had plexiglass put in front, the air conditioning blew in and it was bone-chilling cold because the plexiglass stopped. But there were no blankets. There was nothing to keep warm. And the water system often broke down. So people literally on medication for thirst were drinking out of toilets. Now I heard the normal sounds of men coughing and officers laughing and jail doors shutting. But when you listen closer, you could hear the asylum sounds of people screaming and wailing. And all of a sudden I heard a thud, thud, thud. Then louder, thud, thud, thud. Then faster, thud, 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 thud. It was one of the inmates smashing his forehead into the front of the plexiglass. I ain't crazy, he screamed. Well then, don't act like you are, an unconcerned officer called back. Now the officers who worked here called it the forgotten floor. And I thought they were talking about the inmates. No, they were talking about themselves too. Not one of them had received any kind of training to work with people with mental illness. And worse, all of them said they'd gotten assigned to that wing because they were troublesome employees and their bosses wanted to get them to quit. And so they sent them to work there. But Pete, these are criminals. They deserve to be locked up. Oh, do they? Let me tell you just about one of the persons I encountered. Alice Ann Collier, classic schizophrenia, been homeless for 10 years, constantly in contact with the police. This time she's walking down the street in South Beach and she sees an older woman standing at a bus stop and she says, "Stop stealing my thoughts." And she races over and she shoves the older woman, not hard enough to knock her over, but she shoves her. And well-meaning witnesses come up and say, "Oh, get her arrested, get her arrested. She'll get help if she gets arrested." Well, help is not what she got. She was arrested, and in Florida, you take crimes against the elderly very seriously. They can be charged as felonies. And because she had shoved 2 other people at bus stops, she was charged under your state's 3 strikes law, which meant she meant a mandatory 5-year prison sentence. But when she was taken to court, the judge said, "Well, I can't put this person on trial because she's not competent. And you have to be competent in our system to be put on trial." So he said, I'm sending you to Chattahoochee to be made competent. When I did my research, that's where people went to be made competent. Competent is not the same as being treated. Treatment means you get help. That's not what happened to Alice Ann Collier every day. She was taken in a room. She was shown 3 chairs. On one chair was written judge, one chair was written defense attorney, one was written prosecutor, and when she could tell who sat in each chair, a box got checked off. She was declared competent and sent back to the jail. Of course, she wasn't competent. And when she got before the judge, by the way, the jailers took her off her medication, of course, because it cost money. And when she went before the judge, he got angry. He said, I wanted you to be made competent. You go back to Chattahoochee, get to be made competent. When I found Alice Ann Collier, she'd been traveling between the jail and Chattahoochee 1,151 days, 3 years, and she still had not been declared competent for trial. Well, I'm a reporter, a pesky reporter. I took my pen and paper. I go running over to the prosecutor. Look what I found. Look what I found. They knew exactly what they were doing. In fact, they planned to keep her for 2 more years, which is how long they could keep her without putting her on trial. Why? Because she was dangerous. Medication didn't seem to help her become stable, and there was no safe place in your state. No hospital beds, no long-term treatment bills, no place. So they're just keeping her on that bus, sending her back and forth. But Pete, it's been several years since you wrote your book. It can't be that bad now, can it? Oh, really? Let me take you to Virginia, my home state. J. Shamil Mitchell, 21-year-old African-American man, gets picked up for shoplifting. He goes into the jail. There are no state hospitals available. He spends 101 days in that jail. On day 102, they find him dead in his cell, covered with feces. How did he die? He died from heart failure caused by starvation. The officers were not giving him food because he wouldn't listen to their orders. He went to jail weighing 178 pounds. He had lost 46 pounds. What was his crime? He stole $5.05 worth of snacks from a 7-Eleven. Let's return to my son. Because of a plea deal, we were able to get a judge to put him on probation for 2 years, and he did great. He went to work, he was taking his medication, he became Employee of the Month, and as soon as his probation ended, he stopped taking his medication. Well, I could see that he was slipping. So I thought, okay, I'm a smart guy, I've investigated this, I'll take care of it. First thing I tried was logic. I took a legal pad, divided it in half. On this side was when he was doing well, on this side when he wasn't doing well. And I went, oh look, you're on your meds over here. Oh look, you're not over here. Well, you can't argue logic to someone who's psychotic and not thinking logically. So then I tried bribery. I said, look, Kevin, I'll pay you $50 a week if you take your meds in front of me. And he said, Dad, I'm not a prostitute. I tried duplicity. I ground up his medicine while he was sleeping, and I put it in his cereal and stirred it all up. And what happened? He came down and he goes, why are you fixing me breakfast? And then he noticed, and I didn't know this, but Depakote, a mood stabilizer, has a pink shell and it floats. So he was understandably angry. So trying to poison me, I said, no, no, no. So then I was so frustrated, I said, look, we're going to do the golden rule. I have the gold, I rule. You're going to take your meds or you're going to have to get, and he exploded with some expletives and left my house. I was no match for his mental illness. So I thought, well, I need to call professionals. Now, Fairfax County has a mobile crisis response team that you can call to come do an evaluation of someone who's in crisis. So I called that number. And the dispatcher answered and he said, tell me what's going on. I said, my son is off his meds. Let me tell you what happened last. Oh, you can't judge him on what happened last time. That's not fair. But he's off his meds. He's going downhill. Is he violent? No, he's not violent. He's not dangerous. He hadn't threatened anyone. We have 1.5 million people in Fairfax County. We have one mobile crisis respond. We cannot respond to somebody who's just gone off his meds. You call us later. Well, the night I didn't have to lie, the night he became violent, I called that same dispatcher. And I said, please, please come. My son is violent. And he goes, whoa, is he dangerous or violent? And I said, he's violent. And he goes, oh, we don't come if they're violent. You need to call the police. Well, the police came, and they shot him twice with a taser and took him away. Now imagine this for a second. You heard my fancy dancy biography, right? I had written a book about this. I had political connections. We live in an affluent era. I was well educated, well, I went to college, and I still couldn't get my son help. Imagine if you don't speak the language, if you have no money, if you don't have any connections, anyone to turn to in the community, how do you get help? Well, we were stuck in a revolving door. Kevin would take his medication, become convinced he didn't need it, be hospitalized, we'd do it again. We went through 6 years of this, multiple hospitalizations. So the last time Kevin was sick, it was Thanksgiving. He could tell I knew he was off his meds. He was afraid I was going to call the police. He jumped in his car and he took off. And I call and I call and I call. Finally he answers. I said, where are you going? He says, I'm going to heaven. And I went, oh man, that's not a good thing to hear. And then he hung up. Well, he ran out of gas in North Carolina. And he called me. And he's sobbing. And he says, Dad, I'm out of gas. I said, no problem, son. You know, I'll come down and get you. No, don't come. All right, well, let's get some gas to your car. I'll give you a credit card. No, you don't understand, Dad. You don't understand. The voices are telling me if I step out of this car, I will die. Now, you all know that's ridiculous. But how do you know you're sitting here today and patients, not prisoners? Your brain is telling you. And if all of a sudden your brain said, man, if I leave this event, I'm going to die, man, Lisa, you'd have your hands full. Because none of us would go anywhere. So finally, by this time, I'd interviewed all these experts. And they told me that arguing with him, trying to control him wasn't going to work. I needed to partner with him. So I said, okay, I'll get gas over there and we'll get you home. Don't call the police. So I did what no father should have done. Sorry, Colonel Wells, about this. He drove for 4 hours, completely psychotic, back up to where I lived, went off the road twice, luckily didn't hit anyone and wasn't arrested. And I said, I want to be your partner, not your parent. That's what all the experts said. See if you can partner with him and try to get him to move in a direction towards medication. He said, okay, Dad, okay. I said, what do you want to do? What are you trying to accomplish? He said, there's a safe house. I want to go to that safe house tonight and just think. I said, great. So I drove him to the safe house. I thought, wow, he's going to be safe there. Well, in the middle of the night, he took off all his clothes and he walked out of that place. But listen to what happened to him. He's walking down the street naked and a CIT, Crisis Intervention Trained Police Officer, sees him. And he comes up and he says, hey, buddy, it's not safe walking around naked like this. Why don't you get in the car and we'll go over to the hospital. And my son said, don't handcuff me. That's when I got tasered. I'm not a criminal. Don't handcuff me. He said, okay, I'll use my discretion. Get in the back of a squad car. Then he said, what kind of music do you like to listen to? Oh, I like rap. He turned to a radio station that had rap. And when we got to the hospital, my son said to him, gosh, this is better than a taxi ride. Now that officer, and a lot of states actually require people to be handcuffed in the back of a squad car. But that officer further used his discretion. And he said, I'm going to stick with you. And when the doctor came in and said, oh man, just because he's walking around naked, that, you know, he should be arrested for that. That's not dangerous, so I can't commit him. He said, oh really, doctor? Okay, I'm going to look up where you live and I'm dropping him off on your front lawn. All of a sudden my son was admitted. Then he got a case manager. And this woman literally saved his life and in many ways mine. She saw Kevin and us as being part of a team, a recovery team, not the enemy. She got him a psychiatrist who talked to him about why he didn't take his meds. Didn't just write a prescription. Do you know my son's 7 psychiatrists, only 2 have ever bothered to learn anything more than his name and what meds he's taking? Because they're only going to be paid for a 15-minute med check and then they're going to shove the person out the door. This guy talked to him. Do you know how dehumanizing that is? To just have someone say, oh yeah, take this med and go. Treating the mind also requires treating the heart. He got a pill that helps him with fewer side effects. He's doing great. Then the case manager said, you know, Kevin, you're too old to live with your father. I didn't know how quite to take that, but anyway, she got him in a housing first project with 2 guys with schizophrenia. And it was amazing because he had to be responsible for himself. And he had his own place to live. And I saw this blossoming. And then she said, what are you going to do with your life? Well, what can I do? I have mental illness. No, knock it off. Control the illness. Don't let it control you. So he got a job at Home Depot picking up carts. He's 30 years old, college educated, high IQ, and he's picking up carts. And of course he was getting depressed because all his friends are getting married, they're getting promotion, they're having kids, and he's picking up carts. And she sees him one day and says, Kevin, you're doing great. And he thought she was mocking me. She said, no, 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 please come to my support group. I want you to talk to others. I want, like Jamie, talking to others. And he went, and he found out he was really doing well. He was amazing. He went from someone who needed help to being someone who could help others. And that gave him a purpose. And so he became a peer-to-peer specialist. And today he works as a peer-to-peer specialist in Arlington, Virginia. Let me brag about him. One of his clients, over 300 pounds, schizophrenia in the basement of his parents' house, hasn't come out for years. He went over and just started talking to the guy, getting to know him, got him to go out. They went to McDonald's, not my first choice, but he went to McDonald's. Now that's not a big deal unless that is your son. And then it is a big deal. Today, Kevin has a purpose in life. He lives independently. You wouldn't even know he had a mental illness unless he told you. He's a peer specialist, and a year ago he got his master's degree in social work, his licensed social worker. So don't tell me that people with mental illness cannot get better. The truth is, we can help most people with mental illness. We simply don't do it. Kevin finally got the help he needed, and what's dumbfounding is we are wasting money locking people up instead of helping. We know CIT, we know jail diversion, we know mental health courts, we know post-conviction. All those things work. It's only if you have community support, if you have housing, if you have jobs, if you have these support services, peers, clubhouses. We have all that stuff. We just aren't using it, and your community is wasting money right now. In Fairfax, it costs $52,000 to keep someone in jail for a year. For half that, you can provide housing first and an assertive community treatment date. That's why we have to wake up our leaders and say, you guys need to get together and start helping people instead of punishing them. And most of all, besides all those services, my son was given hope. He was told he would not have to sit on the sidelines of his life, as that first psychiatrist said. Writer Hal Lindsey said it best, man can live 40 days without food, 3 days without water, 8 minutes without air, and 1 second without hope. People ask me, what do people with mental illness want? It's a stupid question. What they want is what we all want, a safe place to live, a purpose in life, and people who love them. Now, I was raised in a religious home in Oklahoma. You put that together, my dad was a minister, and you know that I was dragged to church every Wednesday and every Sunday, twice on Sunday. And I got real good sitting there listening to my dad, not hearing a word he was saying. Until he told this one story. It's about a woman having sex. They're in the Bible, you just got to know where to look, okay? This woman is dragged, she's committed adultery, she's dragged into the center of town. Everybody grabs a stone. They're going to stone her for what they have. You notice it's never the men. No. It's always the women who are going to get stoned. Anyway, I always thought it took two. Anyway, we read that the teacher says, let you who has never sinned throw that first stone. And they put down the rocks and they walk away. Sadly, we live in a world today where people are eager to throw stones. They do not drop the rocks that they have snatched from the ground. They're quick to condemn people who are different. People who don't fit in. People who have mental disorder. They're afraid of them and they would just want to get rid of them, get them off the street. My friend Brian Stevenson talks about stone catchers. People who stand between the angry mob and defend those who can't defend themselves. They're stone catchers. This morning I'd like to ask you a simple question. Will you be a stone catcher Who among you will demand we stop locking up loved ones with serious mental illness when their only real crime is they got sick? Who would demand that people with serious mental illness be given opportunities, not stigmatized? Who will demand that our healthcare system treat broken minds the same way they treat broken bodies? Who will insist that we not only find better medications for these cruel diseases, but we also find a treatment? Who will fight for the homeless on your streets, psychotic man on your downtown streets, the teen cutting herself, the college student hearing voices, the woman standing on that edge of a bridge? Will you? Margaret Mead said it best, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that has, which is why I am so thrilled to be here with you launching Patients, Not Prisoners. And Colonel Wells, thank you. You two are stone catchers. I'm the parent of an adult son with a mental illness. What does that mean? It means seeing my son given not a second chance, but a third, fourth, fifth, sticking with him until he embraced his recovery. Being the parent of an adult son with serious mental illness means learning firsthand about the human spirit and a human will and resilience of individuals. What he's gone through, what your son's gone through, to come out of that, what Jamie has gone through, it is awe-inspiring. I'm the parent of a serious mental illness, and that illness has given me a purpose, changed me from a reporter to an advocate. It's given Kevin one too. I am a fortunate father. I am proud of my son and who he's become. And I want other people to get the kind of help he got, even if they didn't work at the Washington Post and don't know Mike Wallace. That's what I want, and that's what you can help me do. Thank you for coming today. Let's begin our show. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Wow, was that inspiring or what? How many people are inspired? Are you inspired? Wow, awesome. Wow. How many people in this room have a cell phone? Can you take it out, please? Can you take out your cell phone, please? And then I want you to go to Google.
How do you turn it on?
If anybody needs any help, my grandson is in the back. He's helped me so much this week. When you go into Google, I want you to type into Google, Patients, Not Prisoners.org. And when you have it up, hold your hand so I can see it. When you have it up, I see it, I see it. I see it, I see it. I want to see it on your phone. I see it, I see it, I see it, I see it. I see it. I see it. Yes, yes, yes.
She's going to check everybody.
Yes, I see it. All right. I know some people are challenged. It's okay. It's okay. This is what my t-shirt says.
It's okay. It's okay.
The reason why I wanted you to bring that up is in your time, I want you to just review our website. And on the top of the website, it gives you an opportunity to volunteer with us. And volunteering is very, very simple with Patients Not Prisoners. If you just click that button, I will add you to our newsletter that will be coming out on a quarterly basis that will kind of let you know what we're doing in our community and also give you opportunities to support us in what we're doing. Also, what it'll do is it'll allow me to communicate with you. And then last but not least, it also allows you to donate, you know, should you want to donate to our cause. And I'll let you know through the course of the newsletters where your donations are going towards, because we are doing some very, very important things in the community. So what we're gonna do right now, just so that we can make sure we stay on time, you can also follow us on Facebook too, Patients Not Prisoners. You can follow us on Facebook. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna do a little bit of a configuration here for about 1 or 2 minutes. We're gonna do a configuration, and we're gonna set aside our panel. Our panel is going to answer some questions that we've proposed to them, and it will be led by Courtney D'Souza. Will be coming up very soon, and you can read her bio in our program. But one of the things I do want you to know about Courtney is she is sitting next to a very handsome gentleman by the name of Mayor Jamie Watts. So she will come up right after we have maybe about 1 or 2 minutes of just getting everything ready for the panel. In the meantime, if you have not bid on the items that we have out there, it is open bidding. And I would just encourage you to just go in there, make a difference, and bid. We do not want to take these items back home, okay?
Lisa, it's closed.
Oh, is it closed?
Yeah, I've got it already for you.
Oh, okay. Well, she says it's closed, so we're not gonna do that. Okay. All right, we're gonna just do a little bit of a configuration, and then we'll resume probably in about 2 or 3 minutes if you've got to use the restroom or anything.